Mary, Mary, quite contrary. How does your GM grow when sales are starting to slow? Investors, be wary. Her next move is scary. She's playing a card called moral hazard. Her burden we shall all carry.
Hey, y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. Guess who I am with again? It's Dr. Scott Walter. This is going to be interesting. First of all, give Scott a big hand for his poetry. And we are
I'm the Tesla Poet Laureate.
Right? The Tesla Poet Laureate. Yes, you should have a position with a crown and like a robe or something. I don't know. Anyway, we are going to do a factory tour video thing where Scott, this is going to be kind of a hot take. I'm putting you on the spot here because Scott has been very busy. I can tell from you're wearing your visual component shirt that you've been working all day today. And
yes, so jumping from one meeting to the next.
Yeah, exactly. I know how that feels. So anyway, you are going to get put on the hot seat here, and we're going to see if you spot anything interesting. So I'm going to sort of just do this in order as we had movies. So let's see, 1180, that would be the first one. So here we go. So let me rewind this a little bit, and I got the sound turned off because there's really not all that much interesting. There is some stuff later on where there are some of the people discussing the matters, but here you can see building Cybertruck, and I don't believe there's anything particular. Well, okay, this part is interesting because we have the gigantic glass thing here. So again, I apologize. I don't know, especially at the beginning of this, I was scared because I didn't think I was allowed to be videoing. So I was trying to be very subtle. Yeah. Right, so she's talking about things, but I wanted to get a shot of this. Yeah. So we can stop on that. So it is hard to overestimate, like on video, how big this thing is. It is huge. and even yes. The camera part is the place where the little cameras are tucked in is really big. So it's pretty shocking. And so I don't know if there's all that much to talk about there, but
well, to move it around, because it's so big and bulky, you have to have an arm, which is also pretty big and is able to lift a payload like that. And you need to have end of arm tooling, which is also about the same size as the outline of that. And that's why I think over there you probably see, what is that red?
Yes. I was calling it an
parallelogram back pyramid. There. That thing there is probably the gripper for it. And I'm not sure whether we have anything to actually see the actions of what it's going to do. Yeah. So usually it will grab that piece of glass off of a pallet. Right here, it has a stack of them. Yep. So there may have been like a hidden stack behind there, or there's going to be, because it sounds like most everything was in some kind of demo mode right now. I'm not sure it was actually doing anything.
I think dry mode is what they were calling it, but it's commissioning mode where it doesn't actually do anything.
So it's going, it's either in a commissioning or kind of a demo mode there, running around. And that normally what it would do is it would pick up the glass, and the glass comes in a particular side that you're picking it up from the top side of the glass, and now the bottom side is exposed, and then it flips upside down. And usually somewhere around there, I mean, it seems up kind of high, usually, but it could be up there. There will be a nozzle coming down, which is putting the adhesive on there. And so the nozzle does not move. The piece of glass that you're getting, it goes like this, and then the robot just has to go ahead and move it around like that. Right. And then,
I think we can see that happening here, although I don't see any tooling up above it, because
it's looking for where the tooling is.
It's clearly like spinning.
It's doing something like that.
Yeah.
Yes. So it would be doing that. And then when it's done, it flips it upside down and then puts it right onto the truck. And then it'll go over and then slowly come down and then press it in there, and then it will hold it for a long enough period of time. It's not clear whether some other clamps would then come in to make sure it is held in place, or if it just holds it for a certain period of time and then it releases and goes back. Now, obviously, if that needs to be held in place for a significant period of time, let's just say for some reason, it needs to be held in place for a minute before you can take the pressure off.
Right.
Well, that's going to eat into your cycle time by 1 minute. And then more than likely what you would do is that you would have something else that goes on that holds it in place so the robot can get out of the way, and then the car moves ahead, and then you can work on the next one.
Right.
Because ideally you want to make sure all these operations are at or below whatever the takt time is supposed to be, because everything is running at that speed.
The holiday season is well and truly upon us, and short winter days too. While it's great to see family and to travel, holiday stress, lots of, let's face it, not healthy food, and those short days can all take a toll. I know, because they used to for me. That is until I started taking AG1. AG1 is foundational nutrition that provides your body with what might be missing during the holidays and all year long. With 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, prebiotics, probiotics, and adaptogens, AG1 gives you the foundational nutrition your body craves, especially during the disruptive holiday season. And as a bonus, it tastes great with a hint of pineapple. Delicious. Lately, I've been substituting AG1 for coffee in the mornings when I go to meetings or teach my classes. I can sip on it for hours and it gives me tons of energy without that caffeine crash that happens with coffee. Plus, it reduces my appetite, which keeps me from eating all those snacks that people leave out this time of year. And as an added bonus, AG1 doesn't get cold like coffee, so you really can sip on it for hours and it tastes great the whole time. Compared to a year ago, before I started taking AG1, I feel worlds better. I weigh less, I have more energy, and I have a better, more positive attitude. And if you click on my link in the description, you'll get 5 free travel packs, which are perfect for those holiday trips, and a year's supply of vitamins D3 and K2. A big thanks to AG1 for sponsoring today's video. Be sure to click my link in the description to get your first month's supply of AG1, the 5 travel packs, and your year's supply of vitamins D3 and K2. And now let's get back to it.
Yeah, so that's my expectation. It goes on there. Usually the thing is so massive and everything, and it also it's fitting into something that's just not going to slide around. It's like once it's in there, it's kind of in there. You probably press it for just a few seconds, and that's enough. Right. And then it goes off. And then you just make sure you don't do anything that might accidentally bump the glass or move the glass until it fully sets.
Gotcha. Okay. And let's see, what else do I have? 1186. I believe this is the long one. So, and I'm probably getting these slightly out of order at this point, but I don't know if you can see this guy here with the with the lovely jacket for the woman. So yeah.
Yes, okay. There, yeah.
Yeah, so this is the longest one, and this one actually. So I'm turning off the sound again, and there was Dirty Tesla and his wife. And
that was Chris. Yeah. Okay, there we go.
Yeah. They're all around. So, so again, you know, the cameraman sucked. I was too excited. I didn't know. I was
hire someone else next time. Yeah.
Yeah. So here we have some elevators where you can see they're not really doing anything. They're just moving the body up and down, but you can see that the body is being, you know, lowered from a second floor by this thing. So
it's coming in on its carrier. It's picking up the carrier that has the whole frame. Then it brings it up and drops it off on
Right.
No, I'm not sure if it's bringing it down or
not.
that was
We're
just bringing it up. So it's possible. You know, Sandy was saying that usually when you have the layers with the light stuff up top, right, and then as things get heavier, you might want to bring them down.
Right. Oh, did you see the interview today? The one
yeah.
So I watched that real quick right before this. So yeah, so Sandy has. If you haven't seen it, definitely go watch it. It's very cool. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that's very. The guess would be that maybe they're doing the stamping and all of those basic parts, and then they transport it over and they drop it and put it on the line, because the rest of the tour, the bodies were already there built. So we didn't get to see them building.
Right. And the bodies that were built, well, they were down at the lower level, right?
Yes, exactly. And one thing that I definitely noticed was that they had all of their TV monitors were all set to like the Cybertruck, you know, the bar with the fog. Mm-hmm, so they weren't showing us the cool stuff that would go on if you were actually, you know, really operating this. So there's Gail.
You wouldn't see it.
Gail. And so here we start to get into some of the components. I believe these are, I need to go forward just like a little teeny bit. Let's see if I can do this. Nope. Yeah, let me see. I'm trying to find a frame where it's like a little bit less, but these look like the shock towers that, right. So these are sideways right now, but they would be up like this. I believe that's what they are. So, and then, like I said, you can see that it was just showing nothing. So you couldn't really get a lot of information out of that.
So it looks like we're seeing kind of front and rear. And then the next one after it, looks like some kind of frame is coming into place there.
Right. Yes. This part right here, the black part.
Now, the question is, that there looks to me like it's manual and not robotic, because what you are seeing are the lift assists that are there. So if you go back a second, just a little, just back up just a second there. You're going to see them suspended from the ceiling, and that they have these little dollies that move around. So if you just kind of pause it and then go to the upper right, you're going to see where stop it right there now. Boom.
Right. Okay.
It looks like you've got a couple of these things. So those there are usually the lift assists that will allow you to lift up a heavy part.
Gotcha.
And it looks like they're connected over there probably. Oh, and then if you look, so there we go. If we look over on the left side,
Okay.
we can see that there's a rack of these black parts
Yes.
that kind of go back.
Yes. These
and
guys.
more than likely, one of them is being picked up there off of that and then brought over and dropped into place.
Right. Right.
And it's too heavy for a person to be able to pick up on their own. That's why you need a lift assist like that, which is, pneumatic and everything, because you can see all the pneumatic cabling up there and tubes around there. And then you just got something you press to be able to lift up and move around. And that thing pretty much moves left and right. The horizontal movement is pretty easy. You just walk it. And the vertical movement is then done with the lift assist. So that thing's all balanced very nicely to be able to slide where it needs to go very easily. And then they would just drop down and probably bolt it in.
These I-beams are fixed in place. So that would be a station that would just stay still.
That might slide. Yeah, it may be, or it may slide. It's hard to tell. So they could also be on something that allows them to slide back and forth. Okay. So I suspect they have a little bit of movement. Because you see that twisted yellow cable there.
There's the coiled yellow.
It's coiled. So it probably has a little bit of, can move along the line, but obviously it's limited how much you'd be able to move. Right. So that would be typical to allow you to move it. So it looks like you're seeing it come into another state there, that the front and rear shock towers are now being connected to some sort of black metal section there, which later on is where the battery pack is going to be mounted. Okay. And then you see them down there. They seem to be more and more already assembled there. Right.
And here, this is a better view of the vehicle itself. And this is really interesting because the interior, this would be stamped aluminum, I assume, because it's Giga Press, like the interior body, but it's powder coated in black. So they're doing some sort of.
Yeah, they have to. They have to. Yeah, they have to do some corrosion resistance on there. Right. And I don't know if it's anodized or what it is. And depending upon how they're connecting to that, I mean, you don't want to paint something, then bond something to it, because then the paint gets kind of torn off. So a lot of times that's why it's painted after the fact. Right. So it may be that it's some kind of a treatment, not necessarily a coating, that gets it into that state that will make sure it's, because it looks like black aluminum, right? Which
I guess it could be. We saw some that was in kind of, you'll see later, there's like a bronze looking. So I don't know if that would be like a
and it's probably a simple process. It may be a process where they're just able to dip it and they don't have to paint it.
Yes. Because you don't have to worry about, since it's not exterior, this is all interior. It doesn't matter if there's little blobs and it's not perfect and all that kind of stuff.
You're basically just Z-barding the whole thing to make sure it doesn't corrode.
Now, see, that's for people from the north. Z-bard, it's us or rust. I remember that.
And people who are probably 60 years old, because I'm not sure Z-bard exists anymore.
No, I don't think they do.
Because now all the cars come basically Z-bard. And it was kind of ridiculous. You had to do that and make sure your car didn't corrode. And eventually some of the non-American automobile manufacturers decided to do that treatment at the factory, and their cars didn't corrode, and then all the sales went to them. And then Detroit woke up and said, hey, maybe we should make sure that our cars don't corrode after 3 years.
Exactly. Probably a good idea. But I mean, especially with the Cybertruck, this is especially important because it's going to be off-roading, used potentially as a boat, although we didn't hear about that. But, so you want it to be particularly resistant to corrosion and rust because it's going to be abused. So and also you can see, so we've got the frame, and then at later on there's the front and rear Giga casting, which is absolutely huge. But we've also got this sort of wing sail panel here, which is really cool. That obviously adds a lot of rigidity to it because it's three-dimensional. It's not just a flat piece. It's got a lot of structure to it. So
tremendous strength.
Yeah, it adds a lot of strength to it. So okay, so let's see a little bit closer up. So yeah, you can see that. And you can also see that the seats are already in there because we talked about this last time. So if you haven't seen that video, definitely check the video out. I'll put it at the end of this one. But they had a display of the structural battery pack with the seats attached. So you can see how that's already been done. So they've already put in like the shock absorbers, the wheels, things like that are already there at this point. You can see that. And then the structural battery pack, the squircle, whatever they're calling that thing, the seats, all of that is already in the vehicle. So it's pretty well on its way to being, constructed at that point. And of course they talk about the structural battery pack, and then we have more of the sort of, lift and all of that kind of stuff. So let's see. So yeah, and then it
looks like before that, if we look at the stations before that, the battery pack is not in there yet, or is about to get in there.
Let's see if we can go all the way back. Hopefully.
So I'm assuming it's kind of coming back this way and then going up to somewhere else. So
yeah.
Now, where was the delivery? Was it on the first floor? Yeah, I would assume it is.
It was. Yeah. And clearly that's the actual place because they had the the end of the whole thing is that giant set
Mm-hmm.
of lights where you can show it, like you can see it under completely. There's nowhere to hide any imperfections at that point. So yeah.
Yeah, the quality control station at the end. Yep.
Yeah. So, and it was very cool that they could do all the different light colors and stuff. That was where they were getting the kind of like, you know, whatever you would call that, the trippy 2001
now
sort of
I think what you're seeing along the way at those different stations, you're seeing all the tooling that's going to be needed for whatever the operation is. It's sort of hanging there, ready for an operator to grab it.
Yeah.
And that operator could be a human operator, or who knows whether eventually that's going to be Optimus that would just grab the tools and go over. So those tools, you see, they're kind of suspended up there. There's an arm there that is able to carry most of the load, that allows you to just kind of bring it over and get it right in place. So that tooling is, you know, especially designed to be able to reach whatever is the process that you want.
Right.
And it's not going to be all purpose to be able to go everywhere, but it's like, oh, we're doing one particular job. Let's just set it up for that. Easily gets over there, carries some sort of very heavy tool that's able to do things rather quickly.
And also we can see, I'm noticing the fact that we can see the shock tower here that we had seen before on the other side. So they were obviously putting things together. And then once we get to this part, it's in the final assembly stages. So all of those pieces are sort of being attached to the vehicle as we go. Interesting stuff. Like, notice black powder coating, white powder coating, sort of a bronzes powder. It's like there's all these different variations of that. Not exactly sure why. And maybe it's because it's still early vehicles, because I noticed that some of the vehicles had the more bronze color, some were completely black. It was unclear. Maybe they're testing out.
Well, there's maybe a difference between stamping versus casting. So the cast part, maybe they don't have to coat, whereas the other is maybe a stamping.
Yeah, maybe. But most of
it might be a different type of aluminum.
Yeah. Well, but also I saw that, like, the Giga Casting, when they have them on display separately, and they were, you know, silver standard aluminum color, and you see them in the vehicle and they're black. So they're doing something to it. It's not like a black aluminum. They're clearly coating it with something, but it's just interesting to see how. I'm wondering if maybe they are either this is the part where they're doing it, but that doesn't make sense because they need a separate.
No, that you're not going to be painting it there. And then we see in the next step, it's like going up, and if this was a body in white, where you say you put it all together and then you take it to the paint shop, you're not going to have the motors already mounted in there, because you don't want those to get painted.
Exactly.
You'd have to mask them off or do something else. So the idea is that the whole body, you don't care if it gets hit with paint, but in that case you would.
So this is actually, I think that's worth pointing out. Sorry, bad view of that right now, but it's worth pointing out that because of to do the painting at the end of this process, they can build the whole thing. Otherwise, they'd have to put the panels on, do all of that kind of stuff, then sort of take it apart again, paint it, and put it back together.
Right,
so
they skip in this case, it's more convenient to mount everything in there before the panels come in.
Right.
So the panels can be the last step. So they've been able to switch up the order of operations from traditional.
Right. And here, again, I think this is slightly different, because this is mostly black with a little bit of that more sort of beige color or whatever. It's very interesting. And I just don't know if it's because I talked to one of the engineers on the line and he told me that, you know, I asked him and he was like, well, I can't tell you. I said, how's the ramp going? But he said, it's this kind of a thing. And he's like, we keep discovering issues and then fixing the issues, and then there'll be something else that is the bottleneck at that point. I mean, Elon even said that in his interview with Sandy. He's like, it could be something stupid. It's just like one clip is not going together as well as you thought it was going to. It's just a completely trivial thing. But if that's the slow point, that's the bottleneck. So who knows that maybe some of these coding things and stuff are being played with to try to figure out what's going to be the best system to make it work.
Yeah. And then you've got all the sort of the adjacent feeder lines that are coming in, or the tributaries to the main line. And if one of those is just having a problem because a certain part is very complex, or you got a piece of equipment which is really finicky, that's just going to bring the whole line down. And so they're working out the kinks of all those things. So there are probably parts of the line that are moving at the rate they expected, because Sandy said he saw some of it working at a rate of about 60 per hour. So that's one a minute, which is about what most automotive companies run at, something like that.
Right.
But that doesn't mean the whole line is. It means going through there that they could demonstrate, these are all working. And then it might be a question that there's some other station that is now a bottleneck, and they get down there and basically things want to leave their station. They can't, because they're blocked by the next station because it's not operating right. Or you'll have the other problem that the stations are ready, but they're being starved because you're waiting for these parts to come in, and there's like, where's the part? The part's not available. And a lot of that could just be a variety of reasons. Some of it is just, logistics, making sure it gets there, making sure that you replenish a rack just before it empties. And, so you have two of them, and usually, you have different dunnage that you're picking from one dunnage, and then you can swap over to the next one. And then when that happens, you make sure the empty dunnage gets taken away. Another one comes in to make sure you're constantly supplied with stuff. So that all that stuff has to be worked out. And they have also, I wouldn't call them spreadsheets, but you can think of them as like that, to try to figure all this out and how everything is supposed to move around. And it's one thing to do it on paper. It's another thing when you actually try to implement it and you begin to realize that some of your assumptions were not quite right. And that if you're shuttling stuff around, you have a lot of forklifts moving around, people moving around. And on paper, you should be able to move from point A to point B in this amount of time. But it turns out there's a lot of congestion because there's other forklifts and fork trucks driving around doing the same thing. And you come into intersections and it's like rush hour traffic. And then they begin to realize those problems, and then how they try to reschedule it and try to figure out how to make sure that this doesn't become a bottleneck. You can simulate that all you want, and give you an idea that's where the problem, but then you do it and then find out what adjustments you have to make.
And of course, to give your company a little goose, that Visual Components does this kind of stuff. So that's guys,
what we do all the time is basically we talk about doing more or less weather forecasting for the factory, right? We try to give you an idea of what the factory weather is going to be like based on, what's happening, what your product mix is going to be, what's coming in, and, to allow you to figure out like how we're going to weather a storm. Do we need more resources in here? Do we have too many? Do we not have enough? And so I just think it was like, weather forecasting for the factory. It's the same analogy that anyone that takes a trip somewhere, the first thing they do, except me, is check the weather forecast to decide whether you should bring an umbrella with you on your trip, right? Something I didn't do when I went to Austin, It's like, get there and it was raining. I was like, okay. So you do that kind of stuff to find out what precautions you need to take to make sure you're not going to have a bad day as a result. And that's the power of doing simulation overall. And in this case, I'm suspecting that, the ultimate bottleneck is probably going to be the Giga press, because, without the castings, you can't do anything. And I have a feeling that there is sort of like that press, they're probably running it. And I'm not sure if they're able to produce, I've heard maybe 45 seconds or something like that might be possible, but there's multiple castings. So you've got one press that can really only do one kind of casting. And then you need a second press, or you're going to have to turn that over to do the front and the rear. So you've got a lot of castings that are there. So you can imagine if it can do a casting every 30 seconds, but you need two of them. It's like, that means it takes us 60 seconds just to supply what we need for the vehicles. That's probably what's going to be limiting until they get, more presses in there, or they can find a way to make that faster. And that means they need to do a little bit of warehousing of this stuff in advance, which, that's why you see all the body panels around there, because that's what's happening with the stamping as well, is that you don't have as many dies, or let's say you don't have as many stamping presses as you do parts. So they're able to pump them out every 5-10 seconds. It's like really quick. They're coming off of that, and you build up an inventory of that body panel. Then you switch the dies and you do the next one, then you do the next one, and you got to make sure that that's able to supply at whatever the rate is to need to feed the whole line, which tells you pretty much how many presses you're going to need and where you need to run it. Now, some of them you might run 24/7. You may not run the whole line 24/7. It may be 2 shifts, even 3 shifts. Now, 3 shifts is not 24/7. Okay, 4 shifts are. It's not 4 shifts in a day. You're talking like weekends and downtimes, everything else. So some of those things, they may be running almost nonstop just to make sure they get the inventory levels up high enough. And then those inventory levels will start to go down, and then they'll go back up because they'll be operating in what are typically the off hours.
Right. Yeah. And so they can do that. And of course, the other option is to get more of these giga presses, but they're the size of houses. So
it takes a long time. They're costly. And it's like, it doesn't matter how much money you have right now, they can only build them so quick. And then you're going through the commissioning, and then they have to take them apart and everything. So it's like, Yeah, Idra would like to be able to make a greater number of them, but they're also limited to how many they can pump out.
Yeah, yeah. So we don't know. I think what I'd heard was that they had two. That one was in position several months ago, and the other one was being commissioned and built. So they might have two operating at this point, but even beyond that, they're going to need smaller ones because those sail panels were clearly kind of Giga Cast sort of.
Right.
Maybe not Giga because they're not that big, but
the question whether you can do that all in one shot, whether you can set it up so that some of the other cast parts can also be done in the same one, even if they aren't the same part, or whether you're just kind of having to run it separately. And the thing you got to remember is that when you're doing these things, at some point you've got to switch over the die. So you need to make sure that you have a die that can switch out really quickly. And I know they can do it a lot quicker now, but in the old days in the press shops, it could take like 48 hours or more to swap out a die. I mean, it was really lengthy. So that's why you had these really long press runs, and you really had to build up a lot of inventory, because it might be weeks before you return back to that particular part because of those kind of delays. And then, in the 80s, they started coming up with these, I think Toshiba and others, that were much quicker. And I think they could like switch out a die in 45 minutes. Now, Idra, that's a little bit different. I don't know if it's the same.
Yeah.
So
they're pretty big dies.
Yeah. They're pretty big. And it's also, it's different. I mean, the dies that you're seeing in the stamping, they're kind of laying horizontal, whereas the Giga Press, it's different orientation.
Yeah. And of course, that was the part they didn't let us see. All the, when you saw the skeleton of the truck come down, that was the earliest we saw in the process. So, and then obviously they're putting in, I'm trying to remember, I believe this is the front unit. So, with the front motor and the arms, and of course the shock towers, but they're not even put together yet. So they're sort of just they're being placed, and then they're, being constructed as they go.
Okay. So that might be where the line that's building them. So at some point I saw a video where they're actually being with the underbody.
Yes. That
was being done robotically. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
So I believe that this is because of the fact that they're not in cages and stuff, this is probably mostly human constructed. So people are working this line, and then I'm not exactly sure because it looks like it's running in parallel. I think it's being built as it's going this way, and then the Cybertruck looked like it. So I don't know if there's like a thing that maybe that's where the elevator thing comes in or something. Maybe they put it together and move the truck down. I don't know. It was a little hard to tell exactly how the flow of the whole factory was working. But one thing that's really interesting was when Sandy, I was thinking about Elon and the Model 2, the next gen vehicle, and how, front subframe. So he was saying that I've heard a lot of people say that he wasn't that interested in the Model 2, but he got very excited about the process. That in the Sandy Monroe interview, he was talking about how excited he was about how they were building it, because I guess they're already pretty deep into it at this point. So, okay, so now we can see the front view. Yeah, this is a better view of it. And this is where the steer by wire, when I cut that clip out, I think that we talked about during the Now You Know live stream, this is more or less it. So you've got the steer by wire through here, so that you've got an actuator, you've got the piston that's coming out, you've got, of course, the basically what holds the wheel on, the brake pad, all of that kind of stuff, and then the motor up here, and the main motor that drives the wheels. So yeah, I don't know, we've talked about a lot of that. And then of course the chassis. So this would be that black part that you had seen in the rack before, and it's being pulled out, put together. It looks like a lot of this is human done at this point, because of the
so probably a lot of the assembly, and it looks like it's probably moving from station to station. So an operator is only responsible for a small amount of what's going on and just does it again and again, as opposed to trying to assemble the whole thing.
And again, you can see there's a lack of wires. If you look at sort of more traditional like cars, there's a lot of wiring here. You can see there is some, but it's relatively, that's the steering unit connector right there. So, and then there's some here also for brake by wire and everything. So there are all of these parts, but there's not just the plethora of wires that tend to be around, because they're using a CAN bus system, an Ethernet, CAN over Ether. CAN would be, what is it? Car. Gosh, what does that stand for? Car Auto Network.
No, it was something else. It wasn't computer. No, it was, I thought it stood for car, and I think it's something else.
Yeah, it's like computer auto network. I don't know. But anyway, I guess I didn't realize that traditional CAN worked at like kilobits, like tiny amount. And Tesla's gone to gigabit, which explains how they can do the speakers, because they're running all the speakers over CAN bus. But you couldn't do that in the old days because a few kilobits, you'd never be able to transmit enough data to the speakers to have them play simultaneously. But with gigabit, you've got plenty of headroom. So it's pretty cool as they've done that. So anyway, front assembly unit. So you can see how that will then slot into the vehicle itself. And I believe on the other side, when we looked at it there, you could see that that was already in the car, in the vehicle. So however this is put together, they're transferring it over there somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where, but they're making that transfer over into the main frame of the vehicle. So yeah, and you can see the other opposite steering mechanism there as well, shock towers. So it's pretty hefty. I mean, it's substantial, and it's got to weigh a bit, but also, you know, a lot of aluminum.
Right. But I think it was being lifted up robotically later on, right?
Yes. Sorry, I'm waiting.
And that's interesting because traditionally, I don't think it was. I think it was put in there manually. And that means if the traditional robots are doing it, they really designed this thing for assembly.
Right.
I mean, they really thought about that. They're not waiting for Optimus to do some of these things, but they're able to do it with traditional robots.
Right. So yeah, and I believe it looks like they've just pulled this off the line and stuck it on this stand here for demonstration purposes.
Yeah, probably.
Like they're building her back there. So, but anyway, in pneumatics, it looks like they've got the pneumatics for the brakes and potentially the lift as well. So they have to do, I guess, hydraulics for the brakes, pneumatics for the lift. But yeah, lots of good stuff. Let me see if I don't know. I'm going to go forward since we've looked at that. Okay, so yeah, so moving on. Like I said, this was the longest one. The other ones are significantly shorter than this one, but so again, lifting up what is that, door panel, I guess. Yeah, and so this is the front of the vehicle here, the front area. They didn't show us exactly how they bent it, because I know they're talking about air bending.
Yeah. Oh, there's James. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was like, is apparently he got the
James Stevenson. Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure why he got carted through, but he did. So anyway, so yeah, so you've got a powered frunk. They talk about that, and again, the LED lighting and stuff. This part was very cool. And unfortunately, this part wasn't powered. I asked the guy, I was like, so can you lift it up and show us how it works? And he's like, no. but all of this stuff, you know, the way that the whole front end is bent like that, that's not a simple process. And again, I guess it's relatively simple, right? You can think about bending metal, but it's always going to stretch back to a bizarre angle. And so getting it controlled so it's always exactly right.
Is that front face? That's not flat, right? That's curved a little bit.
Yeah, it's curved. Yeah. So this, whoops.
Which in some ways is even, worse.
Yeah, exactly. So let me see if I can
get that bend and get that shape in there.
Right. That's kind of what I was looking at. I believe that the hood. So this is just the front part. I guess that's the whole hood, but that's also slightly bent. It's not flat. So because you probably want that tension for it. Otherwise, if you put something heavy on top of it, it would collapse it, even with stainless steel.
You need a little bit of that.
You want a little bit of something so it's more tension. But yeah, so this part is slightly bent. This part is slightly bent. There's significant creases there, obviously. So that's also very cool. And I believe that's where they were putting that part in as well. You could tell I was rather excited to be there.
It's a nice mirrored surface too.
Yeah, this part is very wide open. I'm not exactly sure, like maybe they're just missing a couple of the vehicles or something. But you can also see the number of vehicles that were in construction during this time. This wasn't a couple of vehicles that were there. This was like, 50, maybe more than that. There was a lot. And so
I think someone said they counted close to 100.
Yeah. I was trying to be conservative, but I would have guessed more like 100. But that's a really big deal because that shows that they've got the production process. We're not talking about something where they delivered 10 vehicles and that's all they had. They clearly have a lot more in production. And I have heard of, I don't know anyone personally, but I've heard of other people who have been contacted by Tesla since the delivery event about configuring their vehicle because they were almost ready. So even though it said 2024, we could be looking at more deliveries in 2023 as well.
Oh yeah. I'm sure you will. And I would say at this stage, they probably could do close to 100 a day already.
Right.
I mean, it's not a big stretch if depending upon how many shifts you're looking at, that's a small number per hour they should be able to do.
Okay. So this is the little quarter windows, the little things in the front. So this is actually really interesting. So here you can see it putting on the bead So, right, it's not doing it because it's, again, in dry mode, but this is where it would put the bead on. And then I talked to the engineer who was standing there, and he said what happens is it actually feeds that out. Let me go back. It pops it out through the red door, and then a human
and then something else has to pick it up. Oh, then a human takes it.
Does,
I was going to say,
a human takes it and slaps it into place. And then he said they specifically put it on. So he was calling this early in the construction process. So there's still a lot more stations to go, but he said they have to put it on early so that it cures as it's going down.
Yeah. And the tricky thing is that you then have to pick it up from underneath because the bead is on the top, and then someone's going to put it in there.
Exactly.
So they probably have some special tool underneath. That would be a little bit trickier for a robot to get underneath, because normally that's why the robot picks up at first.
Right. And so you can see the cycle time right there. If we back that up, you can see the robot arm got out of the way for the person to grab it.
Now, if you go ahead and run this again, there's something I want you to see here. Okay, the robot got almost past near singularity. So it's going around, and notice that the tooling there spins on itself.
Yes.
To do that. And there's a reason why they're doing it. They're actually adding almost an additional axis on the robot arm. In theory, the robot should be able to take the sealant nozzle and bring it around and make that turn around the corner on its own.
Right.
The thing is, sometimes it can't do it fast enough. Okay. And they're trying to maintain a certain rate of dispensing. Right. And it's just a lot easier for them to do that. See, normally you think of the bead or the nozzle is not really carrying that it has a favored direction.
Right.
You don't necessarily have to have that if it was just cut off straight, but it actually has a tip, and there is a favored direction that you want to have when you're dispensing. So you want to have one part of it always kind of pointing in the direction of motion. And the tricky part is that reorientation, making sure that reorientation is really quick, which is why they do that. And then when they're all done, they have to bring it back around to zero again and unwind the whole thing. Otherwise, it's just going to wind up. Gotcha. So that's like a more clever solution, especially because it's usually very, very flat.
Right. And also, interestingly enough, I don't think they showed the other side window, because I assume normally what it does is it does one of those, then it does the other one, and then it moves out of the way. So
it's able to do both of them.
Yeah.
And you can see that's a pretty quick operation, well within whatever the cycle time they'd like to have, clearly under a minute. They eventually, I'm sure, want to get down to 45 seconds or something like that.
Right. And was that what I was hearing, was that the Model Y is more on the order of 43 seconds cycle time? That's impressive.
Maybe that's here in Texas. Didn't Shanghai say they were getting close to 30?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, Sandy just mentioned that in his talk today. He said something about 43. But maybe I misheard that. But anyway,
I thought it was like a couple of weeks ago that the VP for operations in Shanghai, she said something about it being like 30 seconds, which is remarkably fast.
Right. Yeah, that is crazy. So this was the person this is him explaining that the operator, a human, picks it up, puts it onto the vehicle. Yeah. So he's literally saying that. He's like, picks it up, puts it on, then it cures as it's running through the line the rest of the way. So yeah. I also like the fact that there's a little Cybertruck t-shirt right there. I don't know why, but so I don't know where it would go after this, because I guess the person picks it up, and I don't know. I'm not exactly sure where, it looks like there's a break in the line there. So I'm not exactly sure how it's being transported from that to another, or maybe the vehicle just gets in there. So
is there something on the other side? No.
I think that was still all
the other line over there. Okay.
It was the front and rear assemblies. So we're looking at.
See, part of what you might have there is that's intentionally a crossing that they need to have, because the line is so long.
Oh,
if they need to get around the other side, then they probably just make a break like that. So a fork truck or something like that could just drive right through there.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess that would make sense.
I think that was K10 that you just passed there.
Yes, it was. There's a lot of people. There's like Easter eggs all through there. If you look, you can see.
So that's possibly just so they can transfer through. Yeah.
Right. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah. And that obviously, because it is a ridiculously long line, so it would be hard otherwise. And then these are, I'm trying to remember what those are, what parts. So they're all stacked up.
No, I'm not sure how they're getting fed in there.
Yeah, it was a little hard to see. Obviously, it was like some of these areas were difficult to get through to look at that. So, but we've clearly gone into the robot land, where the robots are putting a lot of the parts on at this point. There you've got one of the, I think the panel for the
Okay, there you got the body panel. Yep.
sail. Yeah, but that's like a sail body panel. But unfortunately, you can't see exactly how they're adhering it to the.
Okay, did you see that? Okay, you see the green lights there? That's
Yes.
probably the camera taking the image just to make sure everything is where they expect it to be.
Gotcha. But here you could also see another robot was coming in there.
Oh, that's going in and doing whatever the fastening is. That's going to be happening there.
So there is some sort of mechanical fastening that's happening there.
Yeah, it's either
Unsure.
Yeah, I think it's mechanical. I don't think it's a spot weld, but remember when it pulls it up. Okay, so there looks like there's something, because there is something underneath, right? The body panel. So the body panel, I think, has a surface.
Let me rewind that a little bit. So I tried to get an entire cycle time on that one. So that's why I was like, but yeah, so you can see on both sides it's doing it at the same time. There's like a choreographed, both of those doors are being put in.
Yeah. So
and obviously it would drop the door if it was doing it for real, but it's
so it's just picking it up from, that's where it would usually pick it up.
Right.
And then it goes in there and it takes a couple of images just to make sure everything is where it thinks it is. Goes in.
These guys come in
holds
and
it. Something else comes in and does a process of fastening of it on there.
Right.
I don't think they don't look like spot welding, but
yeah, I don't know. What do you have any idea what the end of arm tooling for that thing was?
It might be some sort of riveter. Who knows? Self-piercing rivets or something like that.
Yeah, maybe. There were some things that were fairly obvious when you looked at the door panel that looked like some sort of like, it was not quite a rivet, but just almost like a compression thing or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, so it's a little.
Yeah,
it's still kind of
the question
unclear.
is kind of what's happening on the back side. So it's like, okay, you get that edge there with some robots coming over the other, but what about the top surface?
Right.
What's making sure that that's being held in properly there? And I suspect there's something coming around from the other side that might be tying it in, or maybe it happens at the next station that something like that happens.
Yeah. But whatever it is, if it's dropping it after that short of a period of time, it's like putting it on there, whatever the attachment point is, it's happening quickly, and then it's on to the next thing. So it's not a long time to do.
You don't have to do all of it, all the fastening in one station. You do enough to get into what they call geo, or just make sure it's kind of located where it's supposed to be, and then it can go to the next station. Because typically in a body in white, you hit what they call the geo weld, just enough to hold together, and then it moves forward, and then you do a respot. And that's when you start nailing it with a bunch of different spots to get the strength and integrity that you need. So more than likely say, hey, by this time we've used up our tack time, move to the next station, and then continue to go in and do whatever you need to fasten it in there.
And so here you've got, I mean, obviously we're in the exoskeleton assembly state.
Yeah.
There's like a kind of a
actually, if you back up just a little bit, remember when we saw that rack of those black panels that were in there? Maybe we weren't looking at them right. Yeah, go back up, just right there. We don't see anything more. That are those the panels that it then ends up picking up later on? It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I'm trying to read what it says Tesla, and then there's something underneath it, but I can't see.
Because that rack is there for a reason. It's trying to feed something. And then something would take it out, and then it would go down into that other fixture that was holding it in place where the robot came over and picked it up.
Right. Place label here. I have no idea. So yeah. But yeah, it's a little unclear to me what these guys are. There were
you see those, if it is one of those panels, you see there's already some backing on the panels, which is what they use for the attachment points onto the frame, which is why they're not welding or doing anything else. So the panels kind of cover it. That means that came from another process point somewhere else that is actually affixing all that to that part there. And then all they have to do is connect that onto the frame. And so that's where the panel gets its structural rigidity, right in there.
Yeah. So that if we move, I guess backwards or forward anyway. So yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And that would be the subframe that it's all put on.
Right. Because then you saw when it was picking it up, there was a pickup point, and the pickup point also has like some fixtures and everything that are holding it down.
Right. So, yeah. I believe this is
what this kind of points out is with the industrial robots is everything is at a known location and a fixed location. So that body panel comes in, there's something that like clamps it down in place that makes sure it's exactly where it's supposed to be. So the robot just comes over and picks it up and doesn't really have to check it out. There's going to just be some simple proximity sensors that say, the part is here.
Right.
And not much other checking or anything else. Maybe something just to make sure it's the right part, but in general, there's no way the wrong part should be there. So the right part is there. It just goes over and then goes down, picks it up right out of it. It's able to go in. And because it picked it up in a known location, that means it's now in a known location on the end of our tooling. So when it goes over to the body and puts it in there, it's putting it in the right place.
Right. Right.
So there's only one way it can hold it. There's only one way it can pick it up.
Yeah. And oddly enough, over here, I'm noticing, so the glass panel is definitely in right there. You can see that that's been placed.
Yes.
But that rear exoskeleton panel that looked like it was put in the previous station is not there right now. So I don't know if that's just because they're doing it in sort of demo mode.
So this is interesting. So KUKA is still delivering the Tesla colored robots. That's not the normal KUKA. KUKA is orange. So these are the Tesla red, yet EVANNEX seems to get away with their yellow robots. They don't have to repaint them.
I don't know. Maybe somebody doesn't like yellow and orange. Maybe they feel like they're too close in color or something. But yeah. So anyway, it's odd so maybe it's the paneling that we saw. Maybe it's these sort of pieces or something. But it's got to be smaller than that because these have already been attached to the vehicle. So
yeah, it's what's coming on the next. So it's kind of driving backwards, I guess. So this happens and then it goes. So we're kind of reversing along here, and then it looked like some small panels were being put in there, some small stampings.
Okay, so maybe that's what it is.
Had picked it looked like it was picking something up and placing it, and the other robot was coming over and affixing it.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. That it is a little bit of a mystery exactly how these lines are working together, since the other side was clearly going. You could see the piece being constructed in the other direction and creating these assemblies. I believe this is the rear assembly now. So you can see these motors are huge. So it's like a dual motor inside one unit with the electric differential, or is it mechanical? I don't know, whatever it is, but the differential lock that they've got available to them. Okay, so here, property of Giga Texas. So it looks like some small parts that have to be attached that are just sitting in a rack waiting.
Yeah, those are the parts that I think were being picked up by one of those bots and brought over into place.
Right. So, and I believe that is the end of this one. So I told you this was the longest. The other ones are not as long as this one. So I would have just done it all in one shot, except I was scared that the thing would break or something like that. The phone would fail, and I didn't want to
lose everything. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So let's see.
All your eggs in one basket, right? You don't want that.
Exactly. So I think this is the next one here. Okay, so let me move this over here so I can look at that. All right, so here again, let me turn the volume down so we're not dealing with that. But there's Gary. So so we've now moved on to a place where it's a little more open, and you can see the assembly a little more of an open area, possibly because the robotic stuff is kind of done. So I don't know.
And you can see the two wiring. So just halt for a second. So you can see the wire harnesses that go through the vehicle for like the taillights and everything else, which is a black harness. It's a little bit hard to see, but you can see the yellow that's going through there. That is for charging.
Yeah.
So that goes to the charging port. Yeah, it's a high voltage, whereas the black one is probably the 48 volt
48
wiring. Yeah.
And if we were clever enough, we'd be able to actually tell that the gauge of the wire was smaller than the gauge of like 12 volt because it doesn't.
Yeah. And then some of what you're seeing is kind of a flexible conduit that everything is bundled together in there. But the amount of wires going through there is far less than you would normally see in a vehicle.
Yes. Yeah. And also, I believe it's a little hard to tell, but it looks like there's multiple cables here. So one of them would go to the charger.
Yeah, they were branching out into different locations. Yeah. One of them was probably going to like the 220 and 120 outlet.
Yeah, exactly.
So
they're
going
all
to the
right
tail.
there together.
Is a lift gate a power lift gate? I'm not sure.
The back lift gate? No, that's not. It's just spring loaded. So you open it, it has like a slow release, but you have to close it.
But they probably have a sensor. You've got some cameras back there.
Oh yeah.
You've also maybe, since you're going to have a towing package in there, you're also going to have some power that's going to the towing package. Right. So there's a lot of reason for those wires that are out and about there.
Yeah. But still, it's remarkably few considering how much stuff is going on back there.
Well, the thing is, you don't need all this point-to-point wiring.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically, it all kind of comes in and then it branches out and branches out and branches out to where it needs to go. So you can do it in one run very easily.
If people aren't getting that, you kind of have like one main sort of cable that's running, and then you just have little branching points. So instead of having things connected to each other all through, you've just sort of got, you know, one thing with like little.
Yeah, you basically have power over Ethernet, and everyone just kind of stuff is going along there, and then at every single point along there, it's getting the information of what it needs to do. It says, oh, this is my data packet. This is what I want, and I'm just going to take off a little bit of power or turn myself on or off as I'm supposed to. Because normally for everything that you need to turn on and off, you'd have to run a pair of wires for each one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you don't have to keep on running pairs and pairs and pairs of wires for every single thing's out there. You can just say, no, we'll just go ahead and then tie into this main branch and then bring it all the way back. And that's because it's what, gigabits?
Yeah, it's gigabit. It's
gigabits.
It's Ethernet. I mean, it's kind of like, duh, we've had Ethernet for ages. So
it's just power, and it's using power over Ethernet protocol.
It
allows you to do that. And you can have multiple pieces of equipment attached to that.
I think Elon even said that in the interview with Sandy. He's like, we don't feel like we've had any like eureka moments. It's just been like stuff that was obvious that nobody else had bothered to do yet. So, you know, he was like, yeah, you know, the 48 volt is obvious because you can reduce the amount of cabling and make things lighter. And then of course the power over Ethernet, the CAN over Ethernet is all pretty obvious as well, but nobody's had the will to do it. So this is beast mode. Yeah. So this is the dual motor in the back. And what am I remembering? I believe the front motor is induction magnet and the rear two motors are a permanent magnet. Is that correct? If I'm remembering?
Yeah, it might be. It's right.
So,
and one is good for cruise control and the other one is good for acceleration.
Yeah. But the other thing is that an induction one, because it's induction, if you turn off the power to it, I believe it goes dead. So it can kind of freewheel, sort of what the Cybertruck is doing. So in order for efficiency, if you're driving on the highway and you're not going up a big hill towing a lot of stuff, you don't really need that front motor. It can just sort of flywheel. And then if you need it, you punch it, then it can kick in just a second and like, you know, take off with that. So I believe that is correct, if I'm remembering that correctly. But anyway, I think I got a better view of it at some point where you could see it from the front, because you can see it's pretty substantial. But my understanding is that they built new motors for this. These are not copies of any of their other motors. They obviously would take some cues from the other motors, but they're designed just for the Cybertruck.
But it's not identical to the Plaid.
Yeah. And so you've got the, you know, rear steering, beast mode, all of that kind of stuff. And a little bit, let's see if I get a better view. There was somebody standing right in front of it. I remember that, and it was difficult to like get around them, but I'm trying to see if I actually get around a little more, but you can sort of see it from there. Even let me move this out of the way, but you can see that they're kind of, it's symmetrical. So there's like, what's on this side is on this side, and it's pretty
very compact.
Yeah. I mean, it is hefty, but it's also compact given the fact that there's two motors in there. So rather than have two units, it's got one unit that then also has a different, it makes sense because you would want to have that, since you want to have a locking differential, that you would want them in the same, otherwise you'd have to have a big bulky differential that you'd have to have on the outside of that too. So it'd just be more junk that you'd have to have. So,
and you don't have to duplicate certain components.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's going to be some cooling going on there of the lubricant that goes through. So you can probably just make one of those rather than having to have two.
Yeah, now we can start to see the actual, you know, the whole thing starts to take shape for real because we've got the exoskeleton on it. There have been questions about what good the exoskeleton is. People have said, well, it's just, you know, it's just body fascia on the outside, just like aluminum. But it's quite clear from the way they've attached it. However, whatever method they use has given it a massive amount of structural rigidity, especially torsional.
Well, I think if you think about it, if you frame a wall with 2x4s,
yeah,
you know, you might think that's the structure of your house, but you know, if you take that frame of 2x4s, you kind of push it on one side, it's kind of like go back and forth like this, because it doesn't have a lot of lateral strength that way. But then if you put sheetrock on there, what you think of not being something very strong, suddenly that is able to resist that force going back and forth. Now sheetrock is not super strong, so obviously that's going to break really quickly. But now let's take that analogy forward. Instead of putting sheetrock on there, you end up putting this stainless steel up there. Suddenly you're going to say, wow, that wall is solid. That's kind of what's going on there.
Even beyond that, you can see that this is one piece and it's got a bend in the middle. So it's like, imagine your house now and you've got the corner. So it's not just a piece of sheetrock this way, but you also got a corner. So it's got resistance from both.
Super
so by
resistance.
bending the steel, you're creating a pretty darn strong.
Yeah, it's almost intentional to bend the steel as opposed to have two different pieces of steel that you just kind of overlay on there, because then they're just going to slide amongst each other. You're not going to have that strength. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess that would have been the easy way to do it, is they could have just cut up.
I think that was bearded Tesla guy there, wasn't it?
Where's it? Like back. Yep. So yeah, there's lots and lots of Easter eggs.
There is. Yep.
So anyway, so you can see here the rear seats have now been dropped in, and look at the size of the door openings. They're just huge. and the doors open a full 90 degrees, which is also fantastic. I don't know if the front does, but the back doors definitely open fully 90 degrees, stick things in. That's always a really frustrating thing. Like a lot of times I'll go to like IKEA and buy something and I'm like, oh, I'll just stick it in the back, but the door doesn't open quite far enough, and you're having to do that weird like angling
struggling. Yeah, you get it in there. Exactly. Yep.
Right. So this is very advantageous. But yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. But the low hanging fruit would have been to make it look cool and just put a bunch of slabs of flat steel on it. But that wouldn't have given it any extra structural rigidity. Whereas here, just by creating one piece with a bend in it, you've suddenly got like a massive amount of rigidity on the back. So it helps a lot.
And I think today Sandy was talking about the different processes they have of making the steel.
Right.
And that it starts out as like an austenitic or austenite, which is like, oh, Austin,
Yeah. No.
Which is a type of grain that the steel can have. And then depending upon the treatment, you can then make it take a different kind of forms, which will make it much stronger. And that it actually turns out to be martensite, which almost sounds like, Martiansite. So it's gone from,
so you've gone from
Austin to Mars. And I'm just like, we really are in the simulation, aren't we?
It all ties together.
It all ties together.
And again, here you can see that. Look at the size of that wheel well. That thing is huge. But you can see here the shock tower, the brake pads and everything. And that's where that front motor would go in. Of course, this is the rear motor with the turning ability and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, so it also just shows off again how small that front area is. Everyone was complaining about the front not being that big, but I'm like, but actually that's how you're going to fit that in a standard garage. Because if it had that big giant bottom in front of it, it would take up way too much room. And there's just like, why have all that extra room? Because the passenger here, their feet are here. So you want the minimum amount of room from the person's foot to the front of the vehicle, or else you're wasting space. So
enough for a crush zone, and that's about it. And to fit whatever you need up front.
Yeah. But anyway, it's very attractive when it starts coming together, and you can really see. And man, the door holes are just monstrous on there. So, and I have no idea what I'm talking about here. So we're getting close because the rest of these are relatively short. Okay, I think at some point they told us we had to hurry, so you start seeing us go really fast because they were like, "You're not going to get in," and then of course we had to wait for 25 minutes and couldn't see anything anyway. But yeah, so there's whatever pieces are being constructed.
Oh, that's because so it was 2 o'clock EST, right?
Central. But we were
it was 2 o'clock EST. That's Elon Standard Time.
Oh, yes, Elon. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so it started on, at 2 EST.
We were told quite explicitly that we had to get out of there and get through to the end. But of course, then we just had to wait. So here you've got, this is the other end of the assembly line. And we've also got that elevator. So I'm almost wondering if they like lift it up and bring it all the way over.
It must. It looks like it's probably going up and down. Yeah, because it has to. If they're assembling it and it's going up to do whatever is going on up top, which we didn't quite see, then it's got to come back down to make it to the delivery area.
Right.
That only makes sense.
Something's going on there for sure. So
up top, we're not sure what's going on up there, but something important.
Right. But yeah, so this one's dropping down. So something was happening up there. And of course, before we even saw this stuff, they had the structural battery pack and all of that stuff built. So that's probably
okay. So the battery pack was already in on the other side, because we were able to see the seats and all. But were the rear seats already in at that point?
By the end of it, they were. I don't know exactly when they got put in.
Yeah, at the end of it, but I think down at where the first elevator was that went up. I don't know if the rear seats were they in there yet. Okay, so maybe that's what's going on. So what they're doing is they're doing the interior up top, probably.
Oh,
so that's taking care of everything in the interior, and then probably also in the trunk, and then the tonneau color. The tunnel. cover
So
one
this
of
one,
those
this one's
things.
just worth pointing out here that they have a little golf cart that's a cyber golf cart.
Uh-huh.
So it's even got a little light bar across the front, which is hysterical. So anyway, so yeah, let's see, what do we got here? I believe. Oh, and so here, yeah, these are just some demos. And I think the rest of what I've got here is like the demo stuff. So some of it I did after the presentation when we were coming out, but this is where you can see the multiples of the structural battery pack. So they put all of this stuff is together. So the seats, the center console, it looks like they've got some sort of internal testing unit there so that it can actually test it and make sure it's all working prior to putting it in. So you know, again, cost of quality, and then high voltage going to, oh, interesting. That's interesting that it's going to the front of the vehicle. So, maybe
Well,
that.
yeah, that's going to the motors, probably.
Oh, right. Because obviously that's go to the motors. And then, but there's
That's
also
the TE
supposedly there's a
connector.
120 that's in the front also. I did not see that, but supposedly there's also a 120 somewhere.
Maybe there's an inverter, so maybe that just connects in, and then you have the inverter.
But of course, this would be
to
the high.
120.
This would be the high voltage. So
High voltage. Yep.
So anyway, all right, and then of course some more frames. So this part was really cool. Okay, so you can start to see the Giga casting here, and that's kind of
Farzad.
Yeah, Farzad was there. So yeah, I liked it. His jacket that he was wearing that day was awesome. So yeah, so pieces, you know, sort of in general state of construction here, various pieces of it. Yeah, okay. And then we'll move on to, yeah, they were really rushing at this point, 1197. So next up would be 1198. All right, you see that one? Okay.
Yes.
A lot of police presence. As we discovered, there was probably a good reason for that. This reminds me of Jurassic Park when they have that thing that's supposed to be live, but you can actually see the little quick time bar across the bottom. So anyway, not Lane. I don't know what she was. It's like I think she was pretty impressed with all this stuff too. It is crazy because it's a long walk. When we came out, we had to come back out the same way. And I mean, we're still a long ways from where we had to go. So is
it almost like a mile walk? Is that what I was told?
It was a long ways. I couldn't really tell you, but when we left, it took a long time to get back out again. It was not short, maybe a half a mile. I mean, maybe at a guess, but you know, there's a lot going on at all those different parts. So here, not too much interesting. I love the ballast, the lifting ballast that it's got there. Also, a little Tesla logo on that. So, all right. So let's see. That was 98. I've got a few more here. So we'll go through and see what else we got. 1203, I believe, is the next. No, 1199. So this would be, yep, another piece here. So let me turn off the volume. And again, just 49 seconds, but so here you can actually, this is pretty cool because you can see the back of the vehicle. It's actually pretty thick. There's a lot of stuff between the exoskeleton and the interior of the bed. And also there is a little bit of what would you call that? Like a little a little tuck there into the bed. So it's not completely straight up and down. There's a little bit of
that's probably because of the wheel well. And the need to have rear wheel steering, which eats in a little bit.
Right. So yeah, that 10 degrees, even though it doesn't seem like a lot, those are really big tires. And I believe they're bespoke tires. I think that they were constructed just for Tesla. And I found out, which one was it? Was it the Car Wow? But they said that the hubcaps are rubber so that if you scrape them, they won't, you know, not like the aluminum hubcaps where they just show all the scrapes.
Oh, great. Yeah. So no more curb rash.
Yeah, that's what they were saying is that so it's actually there's like a gasket that's under it and then the main one, but the main thing is a rubber piece, not a rubberized plastic or something. It's not aluminum, so it doesn't show scratches. So that's very cool. And again, I'm not sure at this point whether I love that the officer was also filming. He's like, yeah, but I don't know at this point. It might be that they're just sort of showing off stuff here because I'm not positive. It doesn't look like we're in really an assembly line anymore, but they may have just taken it apart just to show us what was going on, or maybe this is quality assurance. So there's Gail. And by the way, I'm on Gail's podcast. I don't know when exactly it's going to come out, but we had a really fun ride around Austin on Saturday. So that was very cool. But anyway, so there we go. We got Gail. That's 1199. Let's move on to the next one. This may be connector? No, I don't think so. This was a very cool picture too, though, because you could see like all of them. It looked like they were in some sort of test mode, maybe that like an
That's
inspection
possible.
mode.
Yep.
Yeah, and they had their light bars operating and whatnot. But I guess this would allow people to be able to crawl around underneath them and make sure that everything was working. And then you've got the gigantic quality testing.
Yep. Final delivery. Yep.
Right. It's pretty cool to watch the cars come driving through there. There's a lot of very excited people. So yeah, so this was the end of the line. And then of course we went backwards to get through all of it. But it was very, very long. And there was parts that I didn't get, obviously, but so and there was Rob Maurer. So there's NK10 again. And yeah, I don't know. Some people were trying to take pictures, but then they kept rushing us. So, which was ironic because then we just sat there and nothing happened. So, I believe,
looks like you're going into the time tunnel there.
Yeah, I know. Well, it was really cool when they did all the different lights. So
yeah.
I think maybe I thought we had more of these guys. Let me see. So this is us just sort of walking through. And oh my gosh, we almost killed ourselves because there's little like little things that stick up. Yeah, right there. There's like, I guess there's probably to hold the vehicle in place if they want to stop it and look at it, those little red things. And so we kept tripping over them. But
it's like in a car wash. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so the delivery event, like the locale was right there. So they would drive the cars through and then we were all back behind. But you can already tell that we were not going to be able to see a thing when we got there because everyone had already taken all the front row seats who had gotten there earlier. We were pretty much as soon as we could go, but we that was the best we could do. So let me do 1263. Yeah, okay. Let me share this screen. Yeah, so here we have this is like after the event got done. We got to look at some of the interior here. So you can sort of see broken apart again the drive unit, all of that kind of stuff, and you can see the wheels inside the wheel wells and just how big they are and part of the frunk. So this would be that actuator that's on both sides. I don't know if there's a motor on both sides, but there's definitely the actuators on both sides. And then, of course, that panel glass that we had looked at previously, this big giant piece. I don't know why these are white. This is really interesting. I don't know if that's on the production version or not. That seems odd that they would have gone with white controls instead of black, but maybe it was just there to, yeah. I think that was me lifting up the actuator. Yeah. So, but again, you can see yet another version of the powder coating / whatever it is. And then, yeah, it looks like a standard Ethernet connector right there, up there. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. And then the rear seat.
Yeah, right down there is where you're going to see, the door opening and also the cameras, the B-pillar camera.
Exactly. So, pretty cool stuff. And, yeah, and then.
On this one, they don't have the orange cabling in here. So, it looks like not all the elements are in there. Yeah.
Well, they may have removed that so that people don't shock themselves too. They may have decided that was a bad idea for a demo. But again, I think that this is a cast piece. If you look at it, that it would be possible to stamp that because of the 3-dimensionality. So it looks like we've got multiple smaller cast pieces as well, like this guy back here, this one up here. So let's see if I can find a nice, but yeah, so again, a lot of rigidity on there.
But it looks like it may be some smaller cast pieces that are then connected together.
Right. Yeah, well, this is definitely
so it's not like one solid one. So you see different pieces. So there may be a couple of stamp pieces in there that are then connected onto the casting.
Right. It looks like this wheel well thing is a stamped piece, I would guess.
Right.
And then this is cast, and then this is cast. And so, but again, you're seeing how they're working these parts to create that rigid subframe so that there's no movement, because this, of course, is where the rear sort of sail comes down. And then, of course, the Giga Casting, the really big Giga Casting, is this more silver looking piece.
Yeah, that's the piece down there. Yeah, that's definitely cast. And I'm trying to think if they're then attaching parts onto it. Okay, so that might be one big casting. And then you got the last sort of fin that comes up to the top there, like kind of right where your mouse is right now, that part.
Where is my mouse?
Yeah, right there. It does not seem to be this, made in the same place as the casting underneath it.
No.
It looks like they might be tack welded on there.
Right. And again,
not there. If you go back to where you had the cursor just a second, go all the way to the rear.
Yeah. Or you're saying,
no, I'm not looking at that. The other one, the small piece. See the smaller piece? Go to the very rear. Yep.
Oh, this part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about this guy up here.
Yeah. That now go up. Yeah, right there, right where that piece, that part there looks like, see, it looks like it's attached to the one below it. Doesn't look like it was a single piece.
No, I don't think so. I was also looking over here because the Giga casting here, it's like, it looks like it's actually welded or something onto the Giga casting, like this tower part.
Right. I wonder if that's actually part of the whole Giga casting that, I don't know.
No, because they actually, excuse me, they showed the Giga casting pieces by themselves and they didn't have this on here. So I don't know.
Okay. So those are different pieces that are probably cast separately and then attached on afterwards.
Right. But here you can really see, I mean, this is a huge piece. And of course it's got the dual motor inside there. So it fits really nicely. So the Giga casting is absolutely monstrous. I mean, again, the biggest press that Idra's ever made in order to do this, because it's bigger than the Model Y by a long shot. And then it looks like, I mean, I'm looking at, it looks like maybe this is an entire thing and there's an actual flat part there. So maybe it's just
the
whole thing is welded on the bottom.
Right. And then they would have some sort of reference points that might be coming up. So when you drop it in, it's in the correct location. And then you just weld it.
Yeah. Again, it looks like some beading from the welding going on right there. So yeah. So at a guess, that's what's happening there. So that's very, I mean, it's really cool the way the motor is just kind of very nicely just like dropped right in there. Again, makes it very easy to construct it because there's a big opening. You don't have to be crawling around. We should also probably, like, really quick, this probably is stamped, I guess.
Yeah. Stamped.
So, but anyway, but again, that's pretty cool. Like the back of the bed. And again, you can see that the wiring, even though there is a lot of wiring, is really not a lot considering how much stuff is going through there. Yeah. And here's like another one without, actually, yeah. So you can see that these are distinctly different pieces, but yeah. But that Giga casting, I'm telling you in person, it's just like, wow, how did they do that? It's really, really wide. In some ways, it's less complex than the Model Y rear Giga casting, like when you look at it, because it's just not as much stuff, but it's really big. And I think I get around to the front Giga casting here too, as well. And interesting little pinions here. And yeah, hopefully I walked around to the front. I can't imagine why I wouldn't have, but all right, there we go. Yeah, and there's the front Giga casting as well. So the front one, again, it's very wide open. It's just kind of like a shell that they're dropping things into, but really, really large. So it creates quite the hole for everything to go into. So yeah, pretty cool. And back to the chairs. So I believe that's what I had. So that's what we got. I don't know, insights from looking at that. Again, kind of a hot take for you, but what do you got for us? Anything that you noticed specifically, or does it look like a standard factory just on a big scale?
I think there's some differences. Because some of them are done in sort of an opposite order that you would expect, because you don't have the paint shop. Allows you to do some operations a little bit earlier than others.
Right.
And, it's interesting to see how they're joining everything together. You didn't see any spot welding. It doesn't mean there aren't another area of the body shop where they might be doing some welding, but probably not to the extent that you normally see with any sort of automotive chassis. And, I wish I could have seen a little bit more automation of it actually running, because it's really hard to tell. I mean, first we're trying to figure out, wait a minute, what's the order of flow? Right. Get that kind of figured out, but it would be nice to see how much is really done manually, how much is being done robotically, and get a better idea of how it's running.
If you had to take a guess, taking account of three-dimensionality, clearly they were putting together the front and back assemblies on that one assembly line on the left-hand side. Then do you think they like transfer it to the vehicle kind of at an upper level?
Yeah, that's what it looked like. So everything was sort of put together on the bottom, and then when it goes up top, I assume they're doing mainly the interior stuff. Right. So a lot of the material up there is probably a lot lighter. Maybe whatever the processes are going to be a little bit lighter. Okay. So you don't have to have the supports for as much. The press, obviously the press is not up there. The press is in the ground floor somewhere in a completely different area, because you don't want to have to hold something of that size. And then, you get those heavy castings, which maybe you prefer to keep it ground level to build everything up. And then once you get it, it goes up, and then most of the stuff going in the interior is much lighter material anyway.
So that makes sense. I really hadn't thought too much about it, but of course that's why the elevators are there, is because you, instead of just having one really, really long assembly line, if you use 3 dimensions.
Yeah, because if we look at the line to the left, the line to the left is kind of going down that way.
Right.
And then it probably some way to transfer it over and then started to come back at us this way. Right. So you were walking that line kind of backwards. Then it goes up.
Yeah.
And then it goes zip down over there. And then it came back down. And then it was down. Then it was probably getting ready to go to final delivery from there.
Right. Right. Yeah. And final assembly, because obviously by the time we got to the end of the line,
I'm not sure how much. Oh, yeah. It might have been still a little bit more to be assembled on there, but whatever was done up top, then it comes down. Then there was a little bit more, and then it went over. It's kind of like a little horseshoe up. Over
and the very first thing when it comes down, it wasn't there. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the video, but probably when they first drop it down, back down again is when they probably marry it to the structural battery pack, because it would make sense to keep it relatively light up on top and do the interior work.
But
you think that they had to have it? Oh, yeah, okay.
They already did, because the seat was already there. The front seat was already there.
So,
you're
right.
So the marrying of that was already done down low. And that's what I was wondering. I thought, oh, wait a minute, but it had to get picked up. However, the battery packs are very heavy down there. Right. You got a supply of them, right? So you don't have to carry all the battery packs up there. And then you get a smaller number that are going on up and through. And they can handle. I mean, you can build these things to carry quite a bit low. It's only 2 or 3 stories.
Those elevators were very large. In fact, actually,
just think about how massive a 100-story skyscraper is.
Right.
You want to talk having a hold a lot of mass. I mean, that's something else. We're only talking about 3 stories. It can handle it.
I so happen to have this picture right here, but this would be that elevator right at the beginning of the whole thing. So the idea would be they would be up there somewhere being worked on and then drop down, and then the final assembly sort of thing comes through there. So but you can see how large that unit is. So it could definitely handle the whole truck. So that makes some sense. And again, that also explains why I was really confused, because I was like, wait, it seems like they're running parallel to each other, but they should be like all like stretched out in one big line.
You're starting out with nothing over here, and it's getting a little bit bigger. And then when it gets down there, you have almost the entire subframe built, and then it came over, and then the rest of it starts going in until we're seeing like the panels are being put on. And then at some point, the battery pack gets lifted up, shoots on down. And when it's going on down up top, I assume the interior is being finished. Right. Whatever's going in the trunk and the front, all that stuff is probably being handled up there.
Right. And then it comes back down for final assembly, obviously. So that makes very good sense. All right. Well, we have talked for
maybe even the doors are being put on, because the doors weren't on yet,
we haven't seen that.
Yeah, so the doors were probably up top.
Yeah. Okay. Although I don't know where the doors got put on, because that's actually interesting, because we saw like the construction, but it was not obvious where. Yeah, that is interesting. I'm not exactly sure where the doors got put on. That's very curious. So, anyway, so that's cool. I think that we have covered a good deal of the factory, and of course, I'm sure as we look at it more, there will probably be more things to discover. And I guess Monroe and Associates have a lot of footage of the factory, so they'll probably have even cooler stuff than what we have. So
what does Sandy say? They have maybe 5 hours of footage or something like that to go through?
So they weren't rushed through the factory.
Right.
They got the bonus. So I'm sure there will be more stuff for us to look at after that as well. Thank you so much, Scott, for going through this. It's very, very helpful. I can't, I would understand about 20% of what you showed me as we talked through this also. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much. And of course, everybody, make sure you follow Scott at Going Ballistic on Twitter, because you get that slam poetry, man. And I don't know, do you want to say anything? Because I wanted to thank AG1 because they're sponsoring the video today. So make sure that you click my link, get your 5 travel packs, your supply of vitamins D3.
Get your artificial general intelligence.
Get my yes, I know. Yeah. AG1 has turned out to be the best brand name ever.
Yeah.
So artificial general 1.
For sure. And is that I'm a couple of dozen from rolling over to the next 1,000. So so follow Scott. Make it happen. Close. See if you can hit 7,000. Yep. So it's still a small number, but
Right. Hey, You got it. It's like it has to build over some time. So yeah.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, cool. Thank you so much for this. And yeah, everybody, we'll see you in the next video. Be sure to like and subscribe and and follow Scott on Twitter and all of that good stuff. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Cheers.